On Toronto today, beware of scammers. Toronto Police Force cracks down on fraud. Freezing folk. Toronto's coldest workers suffer through sub-zero temperatures. And finally unmasked, Jihadi John's true identity revealed. This week on Ryerson Television News, a car's windshield is shattered after a chunk of concrete falls from the Gardiner Expressway. Fox News host Geraldo Rivera making some very controversial remarks about hip-hop music. We'll speak to a social advocate about that coming up. And in your entertainment update, Lady Gaga in American Horror Story, Chris Brown denied access to Canada, and a racist comment from an entertainment host. Those stories and more coming up. But first, we begin with the news you need to know. Here's Kathleen and Devin.
Good afternoon, I'm Devin LeBlanc.
And I'm Kathleen O'Toole. And here's Devin with your top story.
Thanks, Kathleen. Advice from the police this morning. Shred your documents and make sure to review your credit history. That's part of what they said at the launch of the Fraud Prevention Month. Emma Abdul has more.
You may become a target of financial crime, but you don't have to be a victim. Today at Toronto Police Headquarters, the Toronto Police Service Financial Crimes Unit are launching Fraud Prevention Month for March to help Canadians to recognize, report, and stop fraud.
The fraud crimes, they don't know any barriers with respect to age, gender, social economic levels, intellect, or specific cultural groups. If there's one message that we can take to the public, we are all equally vulnerable to the fraudster that would convince each and every one of us that their request for money is a genuine one.
For this year's 11th anniversary, the awareness campaign will focus on grandparent scam, identity theft, and romance scams, to name a few. Illustrator of her own commercial art business, Catherine Adams became a victim of criminal breach of trust. Here she shares her story.
Your options are to give up or to fight, and I couldn't imagine doing anything other than fighting it. So I wish I had not been so distracted, but it was a dying parent. I mean, you're faced with dealing with a parent who's mortally ill and looking at your bank statements. Believe me, the parent wins out every time. So I wish the circumstance hadn't been so difficult to manage, but there was no way it could have been avoided other than being distrusting.
Thousands of Canadians fall victim yearly to theft and fraud as more sophisticated methods continue to grow. With the launch of Fraud Month, the Toronto Police Service Financial Crime Unit is creating a weekly Twitter discussion, #FraudChat, as well as working with the Toronto District School Board to educate students on fraud prevention. Emma Abdul, Ryerson TV News.
A Toronto man was stabbed last night in the Northeast End and has died. Believed to be in his 60s, the victim was found on a sidewalk in front of a home by Eglinton Ave and Laird Drive. Paramedics treated the man, who suffered severe injuries to his leg. He died in hospital. Police do not believe he has a homicide, but a suicide, but it was actually an accident.
Court proceedings for former CBC host Jian Ghomeshi will continue on March 27th. Ghomeshi made headlines back in November when several women reported to police that Ghomeshi sexually assaulted them. Ghomeshi did not attend his court date today or the one 3 weeks ago. He is free on $100,000 bail. He's facing 7 charges from incidents dating back to 2002. His lawyer, Marie Henine, was in court this morning without her client. Mark Moore is back in court facing 4 counts of first-degree murder. The 30-year-old aspired to be rapper and befriended Canadian rapper Kevin Williams. He told Williams his name shakes the streets and took credit for the murder of the first victim. The prosecution claims Moore and his 9mm handgun are to blame for the murders of Jamil Spence, Courtney Facey, Mike James, and Carl Cole. He has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges.
The city might be aging faster than commuters want it to. Kanwal Rafiq has the story.
One of Toronto's busiest highways might be falling apart, or at least a section of it. Huma Siddiqui was driving under the Gardiner Expressway earlier this week during rush hour. A chunk of the highway fell off and shattered her windshield. The piece of concrete was 30 centimeters long and as heavy as a brick. It left several pieces of glass on her front passenger seat. Her son was in a separate car driving in front of her.
I just heard a loud bang, and I thought, honestly, that 2 cars had got into a huge accident together.
I'm so scared I close my eyes. I don't know that somebody hit me or what happened at that moment.
They called 911. A police officer showed up and filed a report to the city. The city is investigating the issue, but has not confirmed if the piece that fell off was from the gardener.
We do have staff monitoring the gardener 24 hours a day. It's something that we're very concerned about, and clearly something the city should have dealt with many years ago.
Siddiqui is not asking for money, but wants to be assured that this doesn't happen again. Kanwal Rafiq, Ryerson TV News.
Ford Motor Company says that there will be 400 new jobs at its assembly plant in Oakville. The new Ford Edge crossover SUV will be built there. Ford has invested $700 million in redesigning the vehicle with the addition of right-hand drive and a diesel engine. The company says that the Edge will go on sale this spring, not only in Canada and the US, but also in 100 other countries.
As Mayor John Tory announced 2 days ago, the city has partnered with MLSA and Tim Hortons. Their money will allow the city to keep more outdoor ice rinks open for a longer period of time. Liam Butler reports.
Canadians across the country enjoy outdoor skating during the winter months, and with some help, the City of Toronto will allow its residents to skate more and for longer. The city can't normally afford to keep its municipal rinks open past the winter season. Fortunately, two staples of Toronto culture have stepped in to help. Both Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and Tim Hortons have pledged $100,000 each to keep the rinks open until early spring. The two companies stepped in after the original donor, Green for Life, withdrew its donation for fear of a conflict of interest with the city over an ongoing procurement bid. Toronto skaters are looking forward to the extra time on their rinks.
The weather's been good for the last 2 years, so I mean, why not? Like, if you can get it into March or possibly even April, that's awesome. Like, more skate time for everyone else in the city.
For people who struggle to afford indoor ice time, more exposure to free outdoor rinks is a welcome bonus.
I grew up learning how to skate on this rink. So I walk down, skate for about an hour, hour and a half. It's a great workout. It's nice to be outside no matter what the weather. We grew up, we didn't have much. We didn't have the money to play hockey back then until, we got a bit older. So yeah, outdoors great.
Weather permitting, the city plans to keep all 29 rinks open until March 22nd. Liam Butler, Ryerson TV News.
Are you sick of the cold? Well, it could be worse. These working outdoors are really feeling the chilly this February. Cole Deacon has the story.
This February has been so cold it's breaking records. Torontonians are suffering as they brave the sub-zero temperatures. Most people can escape the cold quickly, but for those who work outdoors, it's much more difficult.
We have to work a period of time outside. When we feel cold, just go inside to warm up. But just, let's say, 15 minutes out and then 15 minutes inside.
When working out in the cold, it's important to know the early signs of cold-related injuries. In just 5 to 10 minutes, your body can freeze and later lead to permanent damage. Early signs of damage could include numbness and pain, especially in your hands and feet. Mohammed Abdoli works for the School of Occupational Health and Safety at Ryerson. He knows the importance of worker safety while out in the cold.
From occupational health and safety perspective, we always do our best to set up limits for the workers to work with maximum comfort in order to increase the level of their productivity.
The Ontario Ministry of Labour requires employers to follow certain guidelines to protect their employees in harsh winter conditions.
Employers are required under the Occupational Health and Safety Act to take every precaution reasonable to protect the worker. And so where workers are exposed to the hazard of extreme cold outdoors, the employer should develop and implement a cold stress prevention program.
The program stresses the importance of layered clothing, insulation, and proper worker training. Cole Deacon, Ryerson TV News.
York and University of Toronto teaching assistants could strike tonight unless they get a contract with a salary increase. The Canadian Union of Public Employees says that teaching assistants provide about 60% of the undergrad instruction, but they get paid below $15,000 a year, which the union president, Fred Hans, says is $8,000 below the poverty line.
Ryerson University has officially marked its spot on Yonge Street with the opening of the new Student Learning Center. Jessica Davies has more.
The wait is finally over. After 2.5 years of construction, Ryerson's new Student Learning Center is now open and is already flooded with students. This space is 150,000 square feet. Located at the intersection of Yonge and Gould, the Student Center opened only 3 days ago. This building cost Ryerson a whopping $112 million. It's made up of 8 uniquely themed floors that offer a bright, casual workspace for students. The first floor is called the Valley. There's a Starbucks cafe and a student-led information desk. The second floor is home to the Bridge. This connects the new building to the existing library. Floors 3, 4, and 5 include a support center, seminar rooms, and many quiet study areas. The sixth floor is the most popular. It's called the Beach. Students come here to enjoy the casual seating and beach-like atmosphere. Jason Swimmer is a third-year RTA student. He says the beach floor is his favorite.
I really like all the themes of the rooms. I can't say I've ever been to a room that's thematically like a beach, which is like the room we're in right now. So really, I don't know, it fosters creativity in an unconventional way, I kind of think.
The 2 remaining floors feature silent study spaces and grad student lounges. Steve Cook is another third-year RTA student. He's worried about the building being too accessible.
But I feel like this is like too easily accessible for like homeless people or just like strangers who aren't Ryerson, because it's like right on Yonge Street and you can just walk in and just kind of hang out. So I feel like security will be called multiple times.
Despite concerns, the general public can't come in past 8 p.m. What some are calling the library of the 21st century is getting rave reviews from Ryerson students. The 8 open concept floors shed a new light on studying. I'm Jessica Davies for Ryerson TV News.
Yves Boldoc has quit his job as Quebec's education minister. He quit because of what he said on school security in the last couple of days. A 15-year-old girl was searched by her principal because she was suspected of selling drugs. Boldoc said that was okay as long as the search was done respectfully. Boldoc also has served the province as health minister between 2008 and 2012. He will now return to his former career as a doctor.
The family of Elijah Marsh has invited the public to a visitation today at Vestio Funeral Home between 2 and 9 p.m. The 3-year-old boy was found 300 meters away from his grandmother's apartment building in the middle of a freezing cold night. He was wearing nothing but a t-shirt, a diaper, and boots. He was taken to the hospital right away, but pronounced dead hours later. The funeral will take place this Saturday morning at St. Matthew's United Church.
The Canadian Senate has passed an amendment that bans trans women from using public bathrooms. The bathroom bill denies those who were born biologically male but identify as female to use female washrooms. Gender Mosaic, a part of Equality Trans, says it doesn't support the bill and argues that the bill allows discrimination. Now with the latest news from Syria. ISIS has their eyes on a new set of Western fighters, but there seems to be a twist in their strategy. CBC Radio Canada says 6 Quebecers have reportedly left Canada in the last month to join the fight. Yara Kashlin is here in studio with me, so Yasha, what's the latest?
Thank you, Kathleen. So there are some reports coming in today that the 6 young Quebecers are from Montreal and Laval. Some are believed to be students. Collège de Maisonneuve in Montreal confirmed that 3 of the people were enrolled there last semester. The RCMP is now handling the case. But what's interesting is that 2 of the recruits are women. Now yesterday there were reports of a woman from Edmonton being recruited by ISIS last summer. Many women go to marry, but the twist here is that young women have gone over to join as a fighter. CBC investigated the family as part of the bigger issue of women falling for the ISIS trap.
I would have shackled her ankles to the bed. I wouldn't have let her go anywhere. I would have ripped her passport up. There's no way I would have let her leave if I knew now that she was going to the craziest war zone in the world.
Has known about this incident and about the recruiter who allegedly paid for her sister's ticket, but she says the family was not informed.
Get killed. No doubt about that.
Her sister says that in retrospect, there were signs that she was changing. That's the latest update on this story.
Thanks, Yara. According to the Washington Post and BBC News, the ISIS militant known as the Jihadi John Killer has been identified. He is Mohammed Emwazi of London. Emwazi was born in Kuwait to a middle-class family who moved to London, and he graduated with a degree in computer programming. His friends anonymously told the Post that Emwazi possibly became radicalized in 2009 after a trip to Tanzania. In video Islamic State, the masked killer believed to be Emwazi is shown wearing a black robe and holding a knife in the videos. He taunts and threatens Western leaders and then beheads his hostages.
Serious warnings. You, Obama, have yet again, through your actions, killed yet another American citizen. So just as your missiles continue to strike our people, our knife will continue to strike the necks of your people.
First appeared in an August video where he apparently killed American journalist David Foley. He is also reported responsible for the death of journalist Steven Sotloff, among others. Hostages released by ISIS said he was one of the 3 British jihadists guarding Westerners abducted in Syria. A spokesperson for British Prime Minister David Cameron would not confirm or deny Jihadi John's identity, but says the police and security services were working hard to find those responsible for the murders.
The Conservatives are hoping for 5 national televised debates in the upcoming federal election, but nothing is agreed yet. The party leaders usually meet twice during a federal election, once in English and once in French. Sources say some Tory strategists believe additional debates will benefit Harper because of Trudeau's shoot-from-the-lip style. NDP leader Thomas Mulcair says he's a big fan of debates, but Trudeau showed less interest. The election will take place on October 19th.
Former Mayor Rob Ford is in the news again. This time, he is selling the infamous famous football necktie he was wearing when he was admitted to smoking crack cocaine. Along with the tie, he is also selling pajama bottoms, a Saskatchewan Roughriders jersey, and a framed Keep Calm and Carry On sign. 10% of the profits from Ford's memorabilia sale will be donated to charity.
The Ontario government has been taking action to make the province more accessible for the disabled, but a new report says there is still a lot of work to be done. Skanga has the story.
Earlier this year, Economist magazine called Toronto the best city in the world to live. But people with disabilities might not agree. A report released last week suggests that the Ontario government may not meet their goal of being completely barrier-free by 2025. Right now, only 40% of businesses in Ontario are wheelchair accessible. This makes daily activities for people living with disabilities much more difficult. Murray Allen would agree.
The Eaton Centre could just needs a lot of work on it. Okay. Also, this underground, the path, they advertise so much about that again. There are areas in it that really are not accessible.
The Ontario Accessibility Plan was introduced in 2005. Advocates like David Lepofsky are putting pressure on the government to impose the mandate on businesses.
We are not on schedule for full accessibility. In fact, we haven't even made a significant impact on the lives of people with disabilities so far in the way the government's implemented this law. So we're running out of time. We have less than 10 years of the 20 remaining. We are not on schedule, and the government does not have a plan in place that will ensure that we get there.
Despite the report, the Ontario government says that they are still on track to meet the deadline. This may be true, but a lack of communication between the government, businesses, and the public has made the situation unclear.
I think the government also has to make it more simple to understand.
However, the government still has another decade to meet their goal. With the Pan Am Games coming up, this could be Toronto's chance to finally speed up the process. Lindsay Skanga, Ryerson TV News.
New left fielder Michael Saunders of the Toronto Blue Jays suffered a left knee injury yesterday while shagging fly balls. Saunders will require surgery and probably be out, at least until Major League Baseball's All-Star break in July. Toronto General Manager Alex Anthopoulos says he will try to find a replacement within the organization, but has not ruled out the possibility of making a trade.
Here's a blast from the past. An elderly man from Montreal has been delivering milk to people's doorsteps for the past 60 years. He isn't tired of being a milkman just yet. Chayanika Chandra has more.
Getting your milk delivered to your front door is something that used to be much more common in the past, but one Montreal man continues to deliver milk and other dairy products to his loyal customers every day for the past 60 years. Arnaldo de Castris first started his career as a milkman with his uncle when he was 17 years old. In a single day, De Castris makes around 300 deliveries and knows most of his customers by name.
When we mention it to friends, they think it's so strange that we have a milk service, a delivery, which is really rare. So they think we're living back in the 50s or something.
His clientele remains loyal because they look forward to seeing his happy face during his delivery every morning.
When he's not around, we worry.
Yeah, exactly.
He's incredibly reliable. And who could not want to see that happy face?
The number of clients has gone down over time, but his enthusiasm remains the same. Although he's 79, De Castris finds it hard to give up his nostalgic career.
I'm thinking about maybe this summer I should wrap it up. I really don't want to, but I think I should.
As one of the last remaining milkmen in the country, De Castris will keep delivering smiles to his customers until he decides to retire. Shayanika Chandra, Ryerson TV News.
That's it for the news with Toronto Today.
But stick around for more Toronto stories. Here's Greg Hanna.
Thanks, Kathleen and Devin. Now, you may know Geraldo Rivera from Fox News. He's a political commentator and host there, and he's been known to say a couple of outrageous things now and again. This week, he's in hot water for comments he made about hip-hop music. He said, among other things, quote, "Hip-hop music does more damage to black and brown people than racism," end quote. To get some insight into this now, we have Emily Wallachuk, who is joined by a social activist, Jordan Samuels.
Hi, Greg, thanks. I'm here with Jordan Samuels. She's an equity and anti-oppression workshop facilitator. Thanks for being with us, Jordan. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So today we're just talking about Geraldo Rivera and his comments in regards to hip-hop music. What do you think of his comments? How does that make you feel?
I think that his comments were extremely ignorant and misguided. I think that hip-hop was in fact born as an art form out of racism, as a way to bring together community and also talk about the resistances that the black community and brown community has had to, struggle and overcome to when it comes to institutional racism.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that hip-hop is worse than racism as a black woman?
No, of course not. I think that racism is institutional, it's violent. I think that a lot of different music and art forms have levels of violence and stereotypes that are associated with it, but I feel like it gets sensationalized in the hip-hop community. Well, hip-hop is, there's a difference also between hip-hop and rap. Like, I find that, hip-hop is a lot more conscious and socially conscious, and that rap tends to be, or at least gangster rap is a lot where people try to associate the stereotypes and conflate it with hip-hop. But I think that when it comes to racism has been, institutionalized, and it's not people saying that black people are wrong because of hip-hop. There's just that the black people are wrong because they have been raised thinking that we're inferior, and it's not because of hip-hop, it's because of institutional norms and generations.
And why do you think hip-hop is associated with negative behaviors? You did mention that there are certain elements of violence in any kind of music, really, and like you said, gangster rap or gangster hip-hop is definitely has gunshot sounds, and they sample that kind of jazz. So why do you think some people who really like hip-hop can often go down misguided ways?
Well, I think that there's a lot of good and bad to every genre, and bad is also subjective because who's to say what's bad. But I think that hip-hop, there's a lot of conscious hip-hop artists that are overlooked for, say, people who are more, gangster rapish, which is associated a lot more with coming from, the struggles coming from the hood. And black people are usually associated with coming from the hood before they're not. So when people say, black people, they're assuming that they're coming from a, racialized or more hoodish background, assuming it to be more violent. And yeah, I think that.
So why do you think that these bigots try to target this like an art form versus like, I don't know, something wrong in the institution? Why do you think that is?
I think hip hop is used as a scapegoat because it's easier to point to black people and say that we're the problem, right? As opposed to looking inwards into, you know, systems of Eurocentricity and white supremacy that gets indoctrinated in all our cultures and our values and what is seen as being Canadian. Because you know what, like Geraldo said, these people who he sees as people involved in hip hop are so removed from the mainstream. And what is really mainstream? Like what does it really mean to be mainstream and dominant? It means, you know, it's Eurocentric and has like a very specific center. And if you dominate from that center, then you go to the margins. Mm-hmm. And I think people are more comfortable being the center and reproducing thoughts of the center being the norm and being what's legitimate. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, that scapegoats people who are part of the margins and might be isolated, might be marginalized. So I think that it's easier to use hip-hop as a scapegoat as opposed to looking inward and talking about institutional racism.
And about the social issues, right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Jordan. And it's going to be back to you, Greg. Thank you.
We all know Lady Gaga for her music, but you're soon going to see her in a different role. Here now with your entertainment update is Kathleen and Devin.
Juliana Rancic apologizes after making comments about actress Zendaya Coleman's hair.
I want to apologize for a comment that I made on last night's Fashion Police about Zendaya's hair. Here we have Zendaya.
Rancic said that Coleman's dreadlocked hair looked like she smelled like patchouli oil and weed on E's Fashion Police.
Maybe weed? This really has been a learning experience for me.
Coleman called Rancic's comments a large stereotype and outrageously offensive. After hearing Rancic's comments, Fashion Police co-star Kelly Osbourne has threatened to leave the show, saying she does not condone racism and because of this is seriously questioning staying on the show.
If you planned on going to the Chris Brown show last night, you may have been pretty disappointed. Brown was denied entry to Canada due to criminal charges and had to cancel his sold-out shows in both Montreal and Toronto. The hip-hop star claimed that he was denied because of visa issues. Brown tweeted, "The good people of the Canadian government wouldn't allow me entry. I'll be back this summer and will hopefully see my Canadian fans."
American Horror Story will be adding a new addition to its cast this season. Lady Gaga will be making her TV acting debut in the show. This haunting teaser was released by Gaga on her Twitter account yesterday.
American Horror Story, Season 5.
Will Smith's newest film, Focus, premiered this week, and he and his wife Jada were sharing the love at the film's opening.
I love kind of touching that dark side and that crazy part of Jada. That would do something like that, you know what I mean?
So you're talking about touching the dark side and the crazy part.
Exactly, you know what I mean?
She just be letting dudes walk up on her.
That's right, I know who's here.
After 20 years, she knows your scent.
I know the touch, I know the scent, I know the energy, everything.
The Hollywood power couple couldn't keep their hands off each other all night long.
Claire, you accidentally hung up on me.
Oh yeah, well honey, you know me and computers.
Get out your iPads and get ready to FaceTime. Modern Family's latest episode was shot entirely on Apple devices. Julie Bowen said that the cast had to wear earpieces to be able to hear each other.
I'm here like, where's my lipstick? Who took my lipstick? It was so hard to listen in to everybody just...
That's it for your entertainment news. I'm Devin LeBlanc.
And I'm Kathleen O'Toole. Back to you, Greg.
And that's going to wrap things up for this week's show. Thanks as always for tuning in. I'm Greg Hanna signing off. We'll see you next week on Ryerson Television News.